Welcome to Cult and Classic.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Cult and Classic, the film podcast where we review a mainstream film, albeit perhaps on the edges, and a less common cult film with a similar theme. This week, we have got a martial arts bundle for you. We have Undefeatable, one of 1993's efforts by Cynthia Rothrock, one of my all-time favorites, and 1998's The Process, known more commonly in the States as The Ultimate Fight, by Ernie Reyes Jr. So I'm excited to get into these. With me, as usual, is Jeffrey Tucker. Hey, Jeff.
Hey, what's up? I'm business on top, pajamas on the bottom.
Ah, it's good. Good time. And Tad Mastroianni.
I'm wearing pants.
I appreciate it. That was the one request we had when starting this podcast is Tad has to wear pants. Yes. All right. I'm really excited. Just a note to our listeners who may be concerned. There are some instances of foul language and some ethnic slurs in the clips for these films. If you're uncomfortable with that, I'm not sure what you're doing watching a cult film podcast or listening to a cult film podcast, because you're going to come across that. First up, we've got Undefeatable with Cynthia Rothrock. I love Cynthia Rothrock. She is a 5-time world champ. Believe karate. Am I correct in that? I should know. But she's a master and also a weapons master, and she had a really successful stint of direct-to-video films in the 90s and late 80s. And she's still actually acting, although she's not doing as much martial arting in the films these days. Jeff, what were you feeling about this?
I thought there was like a couple like of the fight scenes that like I got really excited about, and we can talk about that later. There's some kind of homages to other things that were happening in pop culture at the time. I thought that it had some kind of pacing issues, but overall I thought it was a fun film.
Yeah. So the actual plot for this film is on the surface pretty standard 90s. Kung Fu Karate auction fair, right? Like you've got Cynthia Rothrock is the bad kid. Her sister's the good kid. They don't have any parents. So Cynthia Rothrock is performing in fights where they bet on the winner to get some extra cash to help put her sister through college. But of course, things run afoul when a crazy murderer rapist kills her sister. There's a lot to unpack in there that isn't even clear by the plot. The villain is played by Don Yam, who's I'm not familiar with his other work, but he can mug for days. That face, his intense stare, those eyes. I mean, what was your take on that, Tad?
So I did a little research just prior, because I'd never seen Undefeatable before. I think that's going to be a recurring theme with our podcast is Tad's never seen this movie before. And turns out, I didn't realize this, but this movie actually was a huge YouTube meme back in like 2006 due to the end fight. So I looked up Don Niam. Is that his name?
Don Niam, I think. Don Niam. It's Niam. So apologies to Don if we mispronounce that.
I wanted to see what this guy looked like now. I mean, I am always interested, especially with these old movies from the 90s. It's always interesting to see how they look now. And this guy is discount Sylvester Stallone. It's just too bad that his acting chops don't mesh with that.
He has this fantastic like 80s mullet, right? Like it's super curly and just swept back, and he makes sure that it's very he's always a 3/4 angle shot, and you can see this mullet. He's ripped. I mean, he's definitely fit in this movie.
He's still ripped.
Yeah, that's kind of his thing. We also have John Miller, who plays the good-hearted cop trying to help Cynthia Rothrock into a better time. Let's take a quick look at a clip here, or listen to a clip here. This is Cynthia Rothrock talking to John Miller as a cop.
Christy, you make this working in a diner? Come on.
What are you guys picking on me for? So I make a little bit of money on the side. Big deal. I have bills to pay. I have a sister in college. Cops. Why aren't you out doing your job, arresting murderers and rapists, instead of arresting innocent people?
There's this preppy-looking kid outside asking for her. Claims to be her sister.
Damn, Karen's here.
So this is pretty much verbatim what I say every time I get pulled over for a speeding ticket is, why aren't the cops arresting other people? I have to say, this is kind of a sign of something that I thought was interesting, is the movie, you would, on the surface, it's a very cookie cutter, direct-to-video actioner, but really there's a couple of things they just kind of squeeze in there. Like the cops are kind of stupid. Like they're not really excellent at anything. Cynthia Rothrock's character does all of the detective work, really, and you aren't really sure why they're bothering with her little alleyway fights. I mean, they're not fights to the death. It's what, like the person's left hand has to touch the ground, something like that. I don't really understand what the issue is, to be honest. I guess betting, I don't know. $600 is what she wins for her first match in this film, which, I mean, I don't know that that's really the huge issue that the cops are making it out to be in this scenario. I feel like some of the dialogue is actually poking fun at the concept of the script itself.
I would hope so.
and that's because there's some real questionable dialogue in this film.
There's also some real questionable. I've decided to read the script verbatim.
And
actually a lot of dialogue too for an action film.
There is, and according to an interview that Cynthia Rothrock did, some of the people were so bad at remembering their lines that she actually had at one point their lines taped to her forehead for some of these.
Somehow I just got that impression.
And you can tell, because it's like, the difference between someone who's acting as a character who has dreams, hopes, fears, feelings, responses, and someone who's like reading the lines. Like, they know the lines, but they're delivering them not as though they have any meaning. It's like you could be, you could be reciting a prayer in Swahili, and it would be the same effect. They have no concept what they're saying. Yeah. One thing I'll say about both these films, but Undefeatable as well, as I don't know what happened in the 2000s where movies stopped having people of color in them, because each of these films have a ton of people of color. And it's not just people that, know martial arts, although that's a big part of it, I think, is these crews. But I mean, there was a black martial artist that she fought. There's, of course, Asian martial artists. There's white martial. I mean, it's just, there's a lot of different ethnicities at work in these films. And then it's like you jump to the 2000s from the 90s, and all of a sudden we have this this whitewashing effect where every single film has tons of white people, and that's pretty much it. And it's weird, and I don't know what changed, but I did notice that it was noticeable watching these movies versus what I'd see today on the direct-to-video rack.
I did notice that it's Don Niem, or Niam's character, definitely seemed to have a diversity streak going on with his murders.
Right. Yeah. I thought it was, so the reason it's this, there's some depth to this movie that it's not necessarily done expertly, but I thought was an interesting way to attempt it. I mean, Godfrey Ho is the director of this film, and he's a Hong Kong director who, it's really fun to look up his aliases for movies, because there are like 30 gajillion. I mean, I stopped counting at like 28 or something. As to what he's directed under. But he directed films up until 2002. And I want to say, I mean, there's a massive number of films. I want to say somebody wrote that he did like almost 70 films, which, for Hong Kong cinema, that's fantastic. And in the US, that's of course unheard of, right? Like no director, I mean, Tarantino, granted, he takes a long time to do projects, but he's done what, 6?
It's like 2 a year for a 35-year career. That's pretty crazy,
right? So you get even more even Donald Farmer hasn't reached that level of turning out films. But this one, although there's the typical victimization of women that happens in lots of cinema, including cult cinema and mainstream cinema, the bad guy kills women, because if he were killing guys in their 30s, we probably wouldn't care. There is some societal construct going on there. But the women in this film actually have some agency, which I thought was interesting. I mean, it's not just that Cynthia Rothrock is the badass of the film for the most part. She does most of the fighting. But you have the therapist character who's played by Donna Jason, who also worked with Cynthia Rothrock the same year on Honor and Glory, which is a much lighter film, but a lot of fun. Riff Tracks did it, I believe, last year, so that's extra fun if you like that stuff. Check it out. But she plays the therapist of the killer's wife, and she urges in the beginning of the film the wife to leave Stingray, which is a hilarious name, was Don Niam's character, and she does. She leaves him and leaves him a goodbye note, and we never see her again. And that's, I thought, kind of interesting because it puts, part of the backstory for the villain is, oh, he's gone crazy because his wife left him. Turns out his mom left him too back in the day, so on, so on, so on. It's a flimsy argument. I think most people who suffer loss do not become serial rapist murderers. But it was an attempt where I feel like often we don't even bother getting that. So-and-so's an asshole because they're an asshole and now they're going to get killed. Like, that's the target. And they did try and give some sort of 10 till midnight Charles Bronson movie mental state of the villain, which is interesting, although it's odd.
Well, I mean, they play a lot more into the kind of like pseudo psychology stuff later.
Right. Yeah. And the therapist, she has this great bit when she's captured by Don's character, and he's this really disturbing scene. He's got her bent over a table and he's calling her his wife, and you don't know, is it going to be a rape? He starts to take off her clothes and she whips around and slaps him and starts berating him like she's his mother, and it works, right? Like he stops and he treats her sort of like
for a second.
Yeah. And I thought that was not only did Donna Jason play that scene really well, but it was something I just didn't expect from what I, on the surface looks to be just a enjoyable but run-of-the-mill actioner. So that there's these moments of shine through like that where we get something extra.
Yeah, so like that particular scene, I agree. I thought she played it very well, and like, one of the things my takeaway is like, what was this guy's diagnosis? Like, it's like this kind of weird.
Yeah.
Like, is he schizophrenic? Is he, like at that point, he's clearly not just doing some sort of like masochistic like role play with these women. It's like he's legitimately crazy in some manner. Yeah.
Well, and I mean, they don't. So many films at the time, and I've seen it less, which is I guess nice. They have rape as like this ultimate evil, which I don't think any of us will argue that it isn't. But they use it in such a trash cliched way that it makes it seem just incredibly exploitative. And that's coming from someone who is a big fan of exploitation cinema as a whole. But I was shocked in this film early on, like the event that immediately precedes Don's wife leaving him is he comes home and she's making him dinner, and he comes home from a fight where he brutally beat a man, presumably to death, and he rapes her. And that was a very uncomfortable scene because it was shockingly realistic. I felt like, I mean, she's sobbing. It's not really played for sexual thrills, which I think is the easy way out that would have been done in so many cases. These films, where it's like, oh, it's terrible, but oh, it's clearly fantasy, and oh, they're naked now. Like, that's not the way it is. It's very uncomfortable. It ends with her like just emotionally shut down on the ground, and him. This is the weird, hilarious part, is him eating like a bloody raw steak and what appears to be raw vegetables, just like
seared on one side.
Yeah, come eat your dinner. I'm not hungry anymore. I'm like, I wouldn't be hungry at that at all. That is raw meat. But and I was reminded of it later because when he comes home and finds her letter saying that she's left him, she's like, I made your favorite meal. I don't know what the hell that meal was. It was like raw veggies on a plate of lettuce. I don't like, what was there? No, like, I don't know. I guess if you're making the film, you're like, well, we don't want to cook anything. I'm just like, then don't even include it. Don't even include that. I don't understand what the raw broccoli. Yeah, I also I just want to mention the name of this film is Undefeatable. Uh, can we agree that that's not a word?
Yeah, no, it's not a word.
I don't. I mean, like, I don't even care what Merriam-Webster says. It's not a word. Nobody says undefeatable. I have gone through life having seen this movie for years and years, and gone through life constantly saying undefeated. And I keep having to correct myself that it is undefeatable, which probably is part of the reason why this film is not super well known.
It's
I
probably
think
the least poetic word like that you could possibly string together.
it's like Undefeatable, the film that embiggens the kung fu genre. And
Bigly.
I
I'm not even sure why it's called Undefeatable, because I'm pretty
I don't
sure
either.
everyone in this movie gets beat at least once.
yeah.
Well, I mean, the guy is quite undefeatable until he's defeated. I mean, he's an unstoppable madman, and
Absolutely unstoppable, because
until
no
the
one knows how to
fatality.
no one knows how to track a man down where they know exactly where he lives, what his name is, and where he operates.
Yeah, I don't I don't get it. And just to clarify, because I know that people are going to be leaping on me for this, she's primarily kung fu that Rothrock is known for, which makes sense since she is, of course, did a lot of Hong Kong cinema. She was an undefeated middleweight kickboxing and weapons lady champ for 5 consecutive years, which is pretty amazing. So she's the real deal, and that is, I think, one of the reasons why it was so great to have her in movies. But one complaint I have, and it's so many of her films are this way, they still insist on having a male co-star that has to be a big driving force. Like she's not just like, we didn't need the cop. He's unimportant. And with that said, I don't think he's as strong an actor as she is. I'm talking, of course, about John Miller. Not that he's terrible. He plays a villain in Honor and Glory the same year with Rothrock and Donna Jason. And he chews the scenery in that, like 100%. Like he is breaking blood vessels trying to mug and pose, and it's a lot. And so to see him in this, I was actually surprised when he plays the police officer Nick DeMarco, which I don't know why we really even have his full name. It's not like he's okay. He's fine. Like he's fine. But next to Rothrock, she actually gives some reasonable human responses, like when she's frustrated that she's gotten arrested after that first fight in the clip we heard, and then when she sees her sister's body, she has a very, I mean, I've never lost a sibling, but I don't even have any siblings to lose. Maybe I did, but she has a very reasonable, upset, crying Jag that's seemed pretty on the ball. Interesting fact as well about that, the story goes that her sister, played by Sonny David, was unpaid, and so she left, and before the film was complete, and so they didn't have her to be laying down for Rothrock to act to as she's looking at her dead, and so she just I think Godfrey Ho, they said he used his hand, he held it low off camera and said, "This is your dead sister," and Cynthia Rothrock had to respond to his hand. So that taken in, yeah,
Commendable performance, considering.
Yeah.
My
Also,
hand has gravitas. Thank you very much.
And for those interested in what the sister went on to do, IMDb is incorrect, as it often is. Her name is apparently Sonny David. It is not the Sonny David who's well known for writing music in Elvis movies, where a whole lot of shaking going on, things like that. Definitely not the same person. So bad on you, IMDb. Bad on you. There's one thing that we haven't quite gotten to in this movie yet that is absolutely batshit nuts, which is Don Am's flashback to when his mom left him after his wife leaves him. Let's take a listen to this. This is him sitting on a staircase, listening to a musical locket that he's staring at, and having a vision.
tired of this shit, woman. I ain't taking care of him.
It's just for tonight.
I don't care if it's for 1 minute. I'm with you, not your kid.
What do you want me to do?
That ain't my problem. You can get rid of him for all I care.
He's my kid.
If I have to take second place to him, I'm gone.
No, please.
Mommy, don't go.
This sounds like a bad table read by producers. You know, like no, please. Like the little kid is by far the best actor in that scene, and we don't even see the faces of the other two. I mean, the wife. I mean, the mother is like, oh no, don't go. Like it's just terrible. It's also really, it's very theatrical in that it seems like it was directed by a theater person, because we don't see the heads or the faces of the mother and the man that she's arguing with, but they're walking around the little boy who's on a bicycle outside, and I think it's a black and white, right? At this point, they're walking around him. Maybe it just seemed like they were black and white, but it's definitely got a filter on, and they're just walking around him having this conversation in a constantly moving circle while he looks at them. It's the weirdest, it's the weirdest thing. I
mean, so actually, if you kind of compare that to like our first introduction to Stingray, it almost is like his memories are happening in almost like a fever dream kind of fashion.
Fair
like,
point.
You see like the first boxing match. It is not like in front of a crowd or anything. Mm-hmm. The lighting is kind of very harsh, and it feels kind of like a memory,
and there's some
more
slow-mo
so than like an event that happened in the story.
Yeah, and I think
that's kind of like, I mean, I'm taking a stretch here, but it's kind of going to like the psychology of the character and like kind of the way that he like sees the world.
Well, and one thing in that vein, I felt like it's so easy for these movies to go off into insane psychobabble that means absolutely nothing and has therapists cringing across the country. But when the cop character of Nick interviews Donna Jason's character, the therapist who encouraged this woman to leave her abusive husband, it actually was fairly reasonable. She doesn't go off the rails. She actually says, "I don't know." At one point, he's like, because I think the MO of him as a killer, right, is that he abuses these women. They don't rapes them apparently, and then gouges out their eyes, which we don't even know until like partway through. And listeners, we reviewed a VHS transfer of this. It's what I had for a million years ago, and the quality is questionable. This is on DVD, so you can get a higher quality, but even that, it's not like it's remastered. So the gore effects when we see the sisters' eye sockets is unexpected for this movie, because there's no other real special effects per se. So I was surprised that they put the effort into that. I mean, frankly, another film probably just would have said, close your eyes, poured ketchup in her sockets, and been like, you have no eyes now. But they went beyond that and did some applique.
Above and beyond.
Above and beyond. I think that this movie it's definitely not the best Cynthia Rothrock's films. I think probably China O'Brien 1 or 2 or somewhere along the lines would be the best, or Yes Madame, which is where she first appeared with Michelle Yeoh, who phenomenal. But I think it's the most memorable because it's weird. It's weird, and my favorite thing about this film is the ending to the final battle. Cynthia Rothrock's character and her at this point her police co-star John Miller are fighting Don Am's character in, I don't know, basement number 1 million of some, where is it even that
hospital?
We don't. It's a hospital.
Like a
I guess
warehouse
/
hospital.
Like both of these films, Undefeated and The Process, have a never-ending supply of empty warehouses and empty industrial parks. But it's by far my favorite, because oftentimes these films, I love the choreography, and this choreography I'd rate it a B to B+. It's not it's not as good as, say, some of the choreography, which we'll get to in the process, but it's good. And it's also based a lot in real martial arts rather than a theatrical, Chinese opera or stunt based. Like it's very much, we are martial artists. This is how we would spar, and we're pretending it's for real, which is nice to see. But oftentimes, it's a final kick or someone grabs someone's neck and snaps their neck, and it's a very easy, special effect laden way to be like, oh, this is the death of the villain. They did not do that for Undefeatable. They were like, no, we're gonna make it a multi-part affair. So first, I think I don't remember who does it. They knock Niam's character against a wall, and there happens to be a nail sticking out, right?
No, I thought it was like some sort of like conveyor system, like almost like a dry cleaning.
That's the end. The first part is he loses one eye because he's knocked against a wall where they have a nail that used to hang something, and he comes off and he's got one eye put out, which is already like, ooh, that's a little more, that's a little extra. And then a few beats later, he is knocked onto a like hanging grappling hook that's hooked up to a skybound conveyor. I don't know.
In the basement of a hospital.
I don't know what. Like, I mean, do you have that many corpses?
Also dry cleaning.
Yeah. Like they're hooking bales of hay down there for their off time. I don't know. And so he's got both his eyes gouged out. He's on this hook, and then Nick DeMarco's character hits like, I guess, the on button for this contraption, and it hoists Danian's character up by the eye socket into the sky and just carries him off across the room slowly as he's kicking and throbbing. That, to me, I was like, oh, this movie wins the final battle. Because
all right, I got so many comments on this, because this ties back to an earlier scene, and this was the first time I got really excited about the action. Like, I did enjoy the earlier bits, because I do like it when, essentially the stunt people are doing the action, because there's no, you're not looking at the back of their head for half the scenes, and like all those things are great. But it was the scene in the parking lot, which was framed exactly like a fighting game. Essentially, a scene from Mortal Kombat. It was like directly from it. They were fighting on a like literal like two-dimensional plane, and it even had like an environmental effect where he knocked the guy out of the parking lot onto a car. It was Mortal Kombat, and I was like, oh my god, that must be inspired by Mortal Kombat. I looked it up. This movie came out exactly 1 year after Mortal Kombat 1. So there's no way that's a coincidence. And then you get to the kind of near the end of the film, and you have the John Miller character and the Don Nam character both get shirtless with black pants on. It is you could literally take a frame of Liu Kang and Johnny Cage, and it's just that. It's literally in the same framing of them, looking at each other on a two-dimensional plane, and then they kind of start fighting. And then the movie ends with a fatality, and I was like, oh, yeah. This is where it was like, it just kind of all came together for me. I was like, oh, this is beautiful. Art inspires art type
oh my
thing.
God.
I was like, damn, this is awesome. I love it.
Oh my God, Nate. Cynthia Rothrock is Sonya Blade.
Sonya Blade. They're actually, I don't know where this came, but there was, in the 90s, there was like a fan cast that was like Cynthia Rothrock needs to play Sonya Blade, and I think that she very much is the prototype for Sonya Blade. Like, I mean, she was around, at the time. Like, this was like, oh, like, especially when if you look at the DVD cover of Undefeatable, if you're watching the video of this, we have it here. She's wearing very much Sonya Blade's outfit, right? Like a crop top with pants. Like, that's it.
I totally believe she inspired a character in Mortal Kombat, and then the scenes in this movie, it's beautiful. It's beautiful little circles.
Full circle. We haven't got quite to my favorite part of this fight, though, which is actually after he's been hoisted up into the sky. Let me play this clip.
God. Keep an eye out for you, Stingray.
Yeah. See ya.
They couldn't choose between those two lines to end this eye gouging death scene. So they're like, we got two characters, let's just throw them in there. And I applaud them for using the weaker line second when you would normally expect a build-up. I'm like, I'm just like, did John Miller just like, nah, like, let's just, I thought of this on the spot. I'm going to say it. It's going to be funny. See ya. And it's not. And it's terrible.
Bad puns.
And it's hilarious. Hilarious.
I mean, the whole film, though, is kind of filled with like those one-liners. It really was chocked full of them. And so I love that they doubled up at the end.
They did.
They really bringing it home for the climax.
Sure. And it was like, we know what this is. We know why you're here, and we're going to give it to you. And hope you enjoyed it. And I actually think the dialogue in general, because as you said, Jeff, there was a lot of it. I think it probably could have been strengthened just by changing some of the lines. Like, there's a lot of stock lines in here, especially from John Miller's character as the cop. You know, Nick DeMarco's always saying things like, why don't you do it? You could get a job. You're a nice kid.
Mm-hmm.
And it's meaningless.
Yeah, I actually think the movie would have been just improved by editing. You move the spousal rape scene to the very beginning of the film.
Mm-hmm.
You get people in on the villain like right away. Act 1 starts
because he is the strongest part in a way, because
it is. It really draws you into the film. You start to care about the characters, and you're like, you hate this fucking guy, right? And you can drive by liking characters or hating by characters. And so that part needed to be in the beginning. But they also needed, I think, because we liked the therapist, she's an interesting character, they needed to have the kidnapping of the therapist like way earlier, and maybe have more scenes with Stingray and the therapist. And, like,
she could have been held captive.
Exactly. She should have been held captive for a long period of time. Maybe even have a few murders happen while she was captive.
Mm-hmm.
It would have increased the tension, because what happens is, like, the tension is very low up until that rape scene. And then it gets low again because he's just kind of murdering random people that look the same as his wife.
Mm-hmm.
It just needed. I think it would have
been. Who, by
the
way, don't look the same at all.
I feel like it would have been an excellent film if they just kind of rearranged the ordering of things happening, and really played that tension throughout the whole film. And there's literally a reason why most films and TV shows that have serial killers also kidnap people and hold them for a long time. It's a tension builder.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, that's how you build tension. You have a character that's like in a hole, putting lotion on their skin, that you're like, there's a race against the clock to save this person.
Right.
You have to have that kind of tension builder.
And yeah, it's true. And it's just a body count movie in the middle. Where there is a little bit of nudity. There's one woman that he kills who is topless. Although, frankly, I can't tell if that's the case. Or the VHS quality is.
It's like,
I'm pretty
it's
sure.
Like a body suit.
I'm pretty sure I'm pretty sure they animated out. They gave her a couple of pasties, skin color pasties, and we're like, she's naked. And you're like, no, she's not. But that's fine. I don't really need to see that. There was a great scene that actually I thought was executed really well, which is when Don Yam's villain is he's just coming out of a restaurant or a building, and he runs into this woman, this attractive woman who's carrying something like a box, and it spills out on the ground, and he's like, oh, let me help you. And he's very kind and picks it up and puts it back and hands it to her. And his demeanor is different. He actually looks like a normal person, a handsome muscle guy, and she's like hitting on him profusely, and he's just like, I don't know. Thank you so much. I'm gonna go. And then, like, he sees a woman wearing a floral dress, which was his wife wore, and so, which I guess she wore every day. They could have gone into more of that, because maybe he's controlling and he liked that dress. Like, that would have made sense. But they just like, nope, she always wore floral dresses every day and had curly hair. But he sees this other person.
The last thing he saw, and it's like locked his. I don't know, man.
Yeah,
there's like some weird psychology.
They could have done something there, but he sees this other woman wearing a floral dress. And he's like, I have to go. And like, this woman who's been hitting on him, who he was very kind to, is like, really? Like, no response at all. And like, it was a really great way to show without telling that whole dichotomy that he had to have had, right? Because he's apparently living in the world at the same time as he's committing these murders. There's also, he's like part of a death ring fight circuit where he's going to get like $1 million, and that's not related to the film at all. Like, the police are wasting time on a $600 alleyway game of rough tag, and there's these $1 million murder fights happening, and they're like,
they were completely and utterly irrelevant. Like the fact that he was in that ring had no bearing on the plot whatsoever.
No.
Plus,
I mean, what you could do is you
name
could
was
make it.
Stingray, and they're like, oh,
Just what you could do is you could be like, they're trying to find those death fights, and so they're starting with.
Yeah, I thought there would be a
street
build-up,
level, you know,
but nope,
it's like,
totally unrelated. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, you go to the dealer of the meth to find the maker of the meth. You know what I mean? It's like you kind of like escalate it, but they never played that out.
There's some other thing, like his fight manager like goes to find him, and then he finds his like murder warehouse, and there's this crazy scene where he's looking in this fish tank, which warehouses have fish tanks, I guess, and there's like just a bunch of these eyes at the bottom of the tank, and they look like real eyes. I think there may be cow eyes or something. There's some animal eyes, and it's disturbing to be like, oh, that's gross. You know, and again, it was a touch that I hadn't expected.
The fight promoter was even like, why does this guy have a fish tank full of eyeballs? I'm like, and I was watching the movie going, that's exactly what I just asked.
Yeah. Right. You're like, and then he also has a giant freezer where he's really lazy at putting his dead bodies. Like this woman's legs are hanging out. He's like, we were having a good time. You're like, what is happening here? Like, why? Like, where did this come in? What goes from murdering them in the warehouse to the freezer to then dump their body off at like that same day? Like, I don't understand his process. We didn't get that. They alluded to a lot of torture. Like we saw, he liked to have women like chained to the wall, you know, like sort of medieval style in this warehouse. And then he'd pull out a sword, and it was, you know, you anticipated a really disturbing scene, but they didn't really have it. Right, it would cut right before, you know, the blade hit or something. So it was definitely not a movie for gorehounds, but it was probably a little more than most action fans were expecting. So it's right in the middle on that. I think it's a funky film because of that,
for sure.
So here's a question, Jeff, who would you recommend this film to?
I mean, I think like anybody who really loves like fight scenes, like you know, some good, choreographed action fight scenes. I think they're quite good. I guess if you really love, mysteries, finding the serial killer, I guess you could get into it as well. But yeah, I just say like the, hardcore action.
Tad,
martial
what do you
arts
think?
Fans.
This is a movie for people who enjoy the backyard wrestling of street fights.
That is a fair. It's got a kind of a like very skilled people, but a homemade feel. Like this is, and it's very much. I mean, this movie has production values. It's not a high school assignment. Like it's a very solid middle of the road, like 90s. It does feel a little older. Like it's 1993, but I feel like it's still stuck in the 89-ish area of production. The difference being is that Cynthia Rothrock rocks a very 90s outfit the whole time, and it does change. Like it does change, the like Zuba pants and like the leather jacket. She's always got a leather jacket on. It's kind of and there's characters with like, I think she has a hat at one point, right? Like those weird cotton militant hats. I can't remember. So characters wearing weird things, and each street gang is sort of warriors-ish. They all have like their theme. Matching outfit. Yeah. Oh my God, that first street fight scene with her, where it's like they're like, all right, get it going, and like the gang of people supporting the black athlete start like stomping the wall, like they're leaning against the brick wall,
backwards stomping the wall, which is probably what got them the cops called on them in the first place.
Right,
like noise complaint.
Yeah, someone filed a noise complaint. Oh, it just so happens I broke up a giant street fight.
Yeah, it's hilarious, and it's also they clap. Like the other group then claps, like Cynthia Rothrock's, and they did that thing where two things totally blew my mind about this. Not only did they like film people clapping off of the soundtrack, like it's like clap, 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 like that. They also recorded ADR of people clapping and stomping off beat. Like there's no beat. Like it's just a cacophony. It's like if you gave a bunch of people from Stomp Adderall and the rest, Quaaludes, and then you had them like now perform. It just didn't match at all. And it was this weird West Side Story, meets a post Bruce Lee death knockoff film from the 70s. That caught my attention.
I love that scene though. I thought just
It was great.
kind of the I guess the contrast to like, the quality of the fight and just like the awkwardness of the crowd.
Yeah.
That it felt like really real. Almost.
Yeah, it felt like the kind of thing like if you'd called me, Jeff, and be like, hey, there's going to be like a street fight competition in behind the Applebee's, I'd have been like, let's go, and we'd have gone, and this is what we would have seen. Like some people had the idea, and they were kind of like, okay, guys, like you clap, but like don't see like super like practice because that's kind of like stupid.
Yeah, because like if everyone's in unison, it almost it's like, okay, did this group of people go and like practice? Is this like the flash mob of fight scenes? They like practice their timing on the stomps.
and the outfits, the outfits are so 90s that I thought, I'm like, is somebody gonna start beatboxing over this? Like it literally looked like maybe we would get like a beatbox or like a freestyle rap worked in, and I didn't get that. We'll have to wait till Ultimate Fight to get to that kind of stuff. But yeah, and I would recommend Undefeatable to Cynthia Rothrock fans, of course, but also people who are tired of action films that don't have surprising elements, because there were some moments in this where I was like, oh, I thought I knew where this was going because of how every other movie I've seen like it, and it sort of bucked the trend a little bit. And Don Yam is actually a pretty good villain. I don't really know I don't know how much is acting and how much is he just has the right look and vibe, but he pulled it off, and it was nice.
He's got resting bitch face or resting serial killer face.
I was most engaged by his scenes. So that plus the choreography was just a nice treat.
Yeah, I definitely like certain films really are like driven by the villain. Like they're the most interesting thing. They're like the thing that makes you want to see what happens. And in this film totally falls into that. And like, I don't know what it was like, but he was compelling. Like, I can't explain why he was compelling, but he was compelling when he was on the screen.
He really brought the intensity to it. Like, it's got to take some sort of concentration and knowledge of your physical emanations when you can just look for almost all of your scenes. Like, he has very little lines. And he does it, and he committed 100%, which is more than you can say for some of the weird little side characters here and then. I'm delivering my lines, I normally work inside that restaurant, like that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Nothing against restaurant employees, I'm very grateful for you. I do not like to cook. So let's move on to the next film. This film, I think Tad and I saw it maybe 15 years ago the first time. It would be my guess, my rough estimate. It is called The Ultimate Fight in the US. The actual original title is The Process, which I never knew. And knowing that going in this time for this rewatch, it was hilarious to me how many times Ernie Reyes Jr. says, "The process, man," because it means nothing. And it has no relation to the script. It has no relation to anything. It's never referenced after maybe the halfway mark of the movie. And Ernie Reyes also wrote the script. So let's just get the plot here. So there's a character referred to as Pinoy, who is a Filipino martial artist. He's played by Shashir Inokala, who I probably have butchered his name, but I feel bad for it because he is phenomenal. He is such a good martial artist. He plays the fights amazing, and his whole demeanor as this and I don't mean this derogatorily, but the fresh off the boat immigrant who kind of has to deal with this crazy circumstance that he just falls into and other people pull him into. He does it really well. He's very humble. He's like the perfect. He's played as like a Christ figure here. Kind of. I mean, that's really being heavy-handed, but
there's references.
It's right. It's intended to be that way. And basically he's forced we assume forced for whatever reason to fight in death fights in the Philippines. And so we don't know if it's his master or his father tells him, like, go to the US, find yourself, be a guiding light for others. And so he just shows up in, where are they? Like in sort of like midtown.
Washington?
Are they in Washington?
I think they were in Washington State.
Okay, because it's sort of like, it could be that, but it could also be like rural New York. Like there's a town and there's people, but they live on a farm. It's not a halfway
They walk
house.
from to get to the city.
Gets to the city.
Yeah.
I don't understand the geographical complications of this place. But there's so basically Ernie Reyes Jr. is this punk kid who lives with a bunch of other punk kids who know kung fu or Filipino fighting, various martial arts actually, at this it's a foster home, which is a farm, which is run by a character who is actually Ernie Reyes Sr., who I guess, I don't know if it's the old woman is his wife or just his friend. There's this white old lady who shows up occasionally, and she apparently was a missionary in the Philippines, but she never speaks any other language, and she's British, I assume. I don't know. It was like a weird, proper British lady talking through a Betty White hand puppet. I don't know what was going on with that, but it's like all of the, I don't know how old anyone is in this foster home. Like one of the female characters, she's clearly like maybe 12, 13. The one is supposed to be like a hooker on the side, and she's, I don't know how old she was. She looks like she's maybe 16. Ernie Reyes Jr. looks young, probably younger than he really was at the time of this filming. Then there's a couple other characters that are just kind of there. Ernie Reyes Jr., big fan. First off, anybody who loves the Ninja Turtles will tell you that Ernie Reyes Jr. as the pizza boy in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, Secret of the Ooze, was a dream. I loved him. He also was usually Donatello in the suit for the first film. The staff fighting was one of his specialties, and so he did a lot of that choreography. His father, also very good choreographer. It's on display in this film kind of the whole time. This is the most 90s attempt at a 90s film ever. Like, it's not just trying to be 90s, but it's also more than actually 90s. Like Ernie Reyes Jr. and the other people just walk around in like windbreaker track suits with racing stripes and just like constantly doing like the shoulder arm motions, always smoking cigarettes, always sitting on things cross-legged, and shouting motherfucker and weirdly poetic, nonsensical language all the time. This is a perfect example. Let's play this clip here. This is from the beginning of the film. Ernie Reyes Jr. is walking up to, I guess, another gang who have matching workout uniforms, who are all like lined up on a West Side Story scaffolding.
Keep an eye out for you, Stingray.
That would be very funny if that was the clip. Here's the clip.
Stingray snuck into this film.
This is a sequel.
What a fucking powerful villain.
All right, here we go.
Yo, motherfucker. Yeah, you see me over here. Listen up. It's time to listen up. Do you got the gold that I want or what? Now what? Come over here. Let me express my affinity for yin and yang exactly to annihilate your ass. What's up, motherfuckers? Yeah, come on, chase me, you little bitches, like I knew you would.
Look, I don't know what Ernie Reyes Jr. said in this, but apparently it was some dirty shit because they get mad at him and they run after him. But that is the weirdest language. Like, I'm pretty sure he's freestyling, right? Because that couldn't have been in this.
There's so much ad-libbing in this movie.
I'm sorry, but this movie has almost no dialogue. It is literally just a series of monologues. It starts with the monologue of the dude, like the dad or dude on the
Ernie Reyes Jr.'s.
This is like the second monologue of like 100 monologues.
Yeah,
it is amazing.
That brings me to
a character movie.
Oh, totally. And that brings me to so Ernie Reyes Jr. is credited with directing this film, and I'm sure he did. But I don't know if there was like a second unit director who took over a lot of it, who was very much a physical theater person, because this film, it's like a stage play almost all the time, except for the fight scenes. Like the plot is, Pinoy comes to the U.S. He ends up helping out Ernie Reyes Jr., who just pissed off a bunch of these guys while trying to steal their drugs, basically.
And he like he taunted them to lure them to steal their drugs,
which makes no sense at all.
which makes no sense
because he lures them. He would have gotten beat up.
Yeah.
If Pinoy hadn't showed up, and then he takes the drugs, like that's not luring. Why did you even lure them away? Like that, you just had them meet you. Like
it
didn't make sense. But he has that happen. But it gets weirder because Pinoy then starts living at this foster home with these guys who have constant run-ins with this other gang, and the other gang is selling drugs for a character known as Hitler, who is played by Corin Nemec, who is he's a working actor. He's actually a pretty strong actor in a lot of his work. In this particular one, I have zero knowledge of what planet the person who conceived of this character lives on, because his name is Hitler. He occasionally puts on a little like Hitler mustache. He slicks his hair down. He also is apparently a transvestite, not a transgender individual, but a transvestite. He likes to wear red lace undergarments of women's and look at them in the mirror. I think is he putting lipstick on at one point? I can't remember. It's so crazy. And then he's also got like this Harley Quinn budget prototype going, who hangs out with him all the time. This woman in pigtails who is carrying around a teddy bear the whole time. It's very childlike, but also like pours his drinks and then like cleans up after him. And he just like all of this stuff. It happens on a stage. You have a static camera looking in one direction. Characters move left to right. There's lots of unmotivated movement, meaning like he'll be monologuing, but he'll also be fiddling with something because
point at some roses, you know?
Right, like, and which makes sense because when you're on a stage play, it's tiresome to have somebody standing in one place talking as they would in real life. So you have this forced movement. And it gets even more extreme with the theater stage setup, because early on, when we're introduced to Hitler, the first thing that happens is 3 of his gang members who lost the drugs show up, and there's 3 spotlights in a completely black space. And they they run up one by one into these spotlights and then shuffle as they're talking about, oh no, Hitler's going to be mad, which is the most hilarious like quote ever. I just want their little snippets to be my ringtone, like Hitler's going to be mad. But it's a stage show. And so it was really weird because a martial arts film does not mesh well with the stage show setup. And the fight scenes are very 3D all over the place. Characters are here, there, everywhere, coming at you, going away from you, across from you. And then it gets back to the directing, and you have these static cameras with no movement or forced linear movement. It's very strange. And so I don't know. I
have to disagree with you here on this point.
Okay.
I think it works really well. And it's actually one of the reasons I love this film. Because here's the thing. You have these, like, the choreographed fight scenes. They're almost a little awkward. It's kind of like when a bunch of people just start singing all of a sudden, right? Like you get that like kind of musical feel where like this choreographed fight scene starts. You're like, oh, this doesn't seem in place. And this kind of that stage theater, what I describe as like a surreal, is so surreal. Like that whole Hitler, like every time he's in a scene, it's so surreal. And I love it because it kind of sets the tone for those fight scenes. It's like, all right, this weird, surreal, like theater thing just happened with guys running around into like different spotlights for whatever reason. This weird, like, surreal thing. And then there's like a fight. It just, I don't know, it works for me. It like gets me into the tone where I'm like, oh, I'm totally into this fight scene now. Like,
that's interesting.
Weird freaking world that doesn't make any sense. People are monologuing all the time. Why doesn't anybody respond to what they're saying?
Okay.
I love it.
That's a really good question. And I have to say, I don't hate the theatrical thing, but I think what didn't work for me is the fact that it's so clearly filmed in several units where characters never interact with each other. The Hitler Corin Nemec's character, like he's in a scene with a couple of, like, I think the girls at one point and one of the characters from the foster home, but none of the main characters is he ever in contact with. They're all filmed separate locations very clearly at one time. And so that feels pieced together, which is something I didn't really notice before. I just have to say, as you said, why is no one talking to each other. They're just talking. There's one case where they do seem to respond directly to each other, and it goes horribly wrong in the best way. And I'm gonna play that for you right now. Yeah, here we go. The first character talking is Pinoy. The good guys are facing off against the bad team who is coming to get their drugs back in the front yard of the foster home. Here we go.
Yeah, good Christian. Thou shalt not kill or be killed.
No, he's the motherfucker right there. He's the one. I fuck mothers too.
Oh, man.
What do you fuck your mothers?
Okay, so for the listening audience, let's unpack what just happened here. Okay, they're facing off. The guy's like, "Give me my drugs," and Pinoy's character says, which is hard to understand at first. He says, "Are you a good Christian? Thou shalt not kill." Then another of the opposing gang team says, "That's the motherfucker right there. He's got our stuff," or whatever. Then the out of the blue, he's like, "That's the motherfucker." And then the guy who's standing in front of Ernie Reyes Sr. goes, "I fuck mothers too." Unprovoked. And then Ernie Reyes Sr. leans over and goes, "I'd like to see you fuck your mother," or some weird shit like that. And then stabs him in the neck with a cocktail toothpick.
It was goddamn perfect.
That is the most insane. That is David Lynch. David Lynch could not hope to aspire to that level of insanity.
Nate, do you understand why I love this movie so much?
Oh,
you have to take it. Everyone should take a step back. This is one of those movies, honestly, you can't describe this movie. This is a movie that has stuck with me in my mind for over 15 years. This movie is one of the reasons why I got into martial arts in the first place. This movie is an inspiration to some of our filmmaking later in life. You step back and you realize this is a movie about kung fu kids who drug run, possibly pimp out their sisters for sex. The antagonist is a Hitler knockoff who has 5 followers total. And we haven't even gotten to the most this is the most cohesive batshit plot I had ever seen in a movie. And I mean cohesive. I mean, there is a plot. There is character development. There is character monologue and dialogue. I mean, you know, dialogue. Yeah, well, bear with me here. And somehow this whole thing actually comes together with all the ad-libbing, with all the swears, with all the nonsensical stuff going on, with the fact that the antagonist at some point decides that he needs to walk into a corner and jack off on the corner and perform a martial arts kick while doing it. And you just sit back, instead of sitting back going, "What the fuck is going on?" You just sit back and go, "This is fucking amazing."
Let's talk about that scene, because people will be like, "I need context." No, that's actually what happened. He has some monologues. Hitler has some monologues in the warehouse. Then they, I guess, walk outside of the warehouse. I'm not sure why his men are all of a sudden fighting some other men that were standing there, except for the fact that it begins by Hitler like hustling like he's about to have diarrhea on himself into the corner of a wall. This is the daytime. This is bright daytime. And then furiously jacks off into the corner of the wall. And then these other guys attack his guys. And there's this fight scene, which at one point he sort of donkey kicks a guy behind him. And I guess finishes masturbating.
Yes.
And
then he finishes.
Zips up and yells, "Godfather!"
So what I love about this is in one case, I want to show every neo-Nazi in the world this film, because it is the most degrading thing to the name of Hitler to have happened since the actual Hitler. Like, we do have some problematic things with that, the trope of making the villains feminine. You know, it's like you could, you know, or seeming gay, although he has sex with his like Harley Quinn, you know, knockoff. So he's perhaps bisexual, but he's very feminine and is played that way. And I mean, some people will find offense with that, understandably. However, his character is so fucking batshit nuts that it's just, it's a mockery 100%. Like, there's no way. Also, his entire crew are multi-ethnic. He has like a black follower with dreads. He has a bunch of Asian people who follow him. He does have like one blonde kid following him, and then he has a couple of like he has the one, like, you know, the super strong mini boss guy. And yes, it is that is him. And I don't know, like, and he still calls them like racial, like he still says things like the pure race and like it's the problem of these, and he goes off on these like rants. As
makes no fucking sense.
It makes no sense, and it totally adds something. There's a clip of one of his rants, and we have to discuss the action that happens in this rant as well. Let's take a listen.
We've broken their rhythm. It's time to drop the bomb. We will overpower the remaining chinks and then wait for Jesse and his pet monkey to arrive. The two men will eliminate Senior. The old woman is irrelevant. Oh, the second wave is our insurance policy. Stay here.
Okay, so this is Hitler standing in front of like his, they're in a warehouse, but he has like couches and display cases there. I don't understand his setup, but he's in front of the couch doing this monologue, in which I just have to say, I love that he says, we've broken their rhythm. It's time to drop the bomb. Like, I think those might've been the only two written pieces of dialogue in the whole film. And then everything else is ad-libbed. But he's doing this thing, walking back and forth. His bodyguard's in the corner, and then on the couch behind him is his like Harley Quinn doll, who is masturbating with Benoit balls, those metal balls that are meant to be put in the vagina and move around and enhance sex. And so she's doing that. And the only reason we know that is because she's kind of throbbing, but it's hard to tell in this, you know, the poor quality film. And except for then at the end, the sounds you hear are him walking over to her, apparently thrusting his hand into her vagina and pulling out the balls, which you hear clink. And then he hands them back to her and walks off. And that's like, and then he has them at another point in time and he hands them again. I don't know how he got them back. I don't know what mystic Hitler energy caused those to reappear in his possession. But I want to know who's responsible for that. I need to know.
Cocaine is responsible.
Like Ernie Reyes. And when you said, Tab, that this is like everyone's movie, and let's remember, Ernie Reyes Jr. is also probably most well known for Surf Ninjas. Okay, which is the fantastic like what was the other, Sidekicks is the other movie, right? The slightly better, and Surf Ninjas was like the knockoff, but still a lot of fun for kids. Like, you know, oh, we're kids and we do kung fu and we're fun. It's like we're Ninja Turtles, but we're not turtles, and we don't live in the sewer, and we don't have a dad. So it's like it's like those movies. This still feels like those movies, even though they have racial slurs, they curse constantly. The kids do nothing but chain smoke, drink coffee, and suggest that they're going to sleep with each other. Like that's literally, and sell drugs.
Cringeworthy family.
Cringeworthy. That's all they do, and yet it feels somehow wholesome because it's like a child's vision of what it's like to be gangsta. Like, and it's so 90s that like people are just like beatboxing on their own. Ernie Reyes Jr., the most of his lines are just like just this laughing, like cocky thing. He has his shirt off the whole time, basically after the opening scene. And he just sits on furniture while people do things. And I really give him credit for giving the better role to the lead, Pinoy. Like Pinoy is really the lead. Not Ernie Reyes Jr. And he should be. He's fantastic. His martial arts are amazing. Watching him, we do a lot of watching him just work out in the yard. And he's not a big guy. He's very small, but he's obviously super fit. They're both pretty small, super fit. And I mean, he looks like a master. I don't know much about martial arts other than I obsess over it in films like this, and he wins it for me. Ernie Reyes Sr. is mostly responsible for the choreography. I like the choreography in this film. It's much more contemporary in style than Undefeatable, even though it's like 5 years different. And I think it's because there's a lot of double jump kicks in the air, split kicks, things that probably I would hazard to say are not super effective in real life, but are pretty great to watch happen on camera. I think well, the one thing, and Jeff, you said that you were like, they were kind of okay in some ways. I think what you might be referring to is it's that whole syndrome where no one really interacts with each other beyond their immediate enemy. Like there's a big fight going on, but it's really 3 fights that are happening sort of adjacent to each other.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like it's much easier to get across in a cartoon where it's like, we can pretend we're in a completely different place, but it's a lot harder to do when you're just fighting in front of a, small-time dairy farm in the grass and rolling around in the grass on a picnic table and stuff like that.
Yeah, I really do enjoy the kind of stunt people doing the action. It makes it a lot more fun to watch because it's not like constantly cutting to kind of odd angles to kind of make it feel cohesive.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's really just like one shot and you like see legitimately talented people performing martial arts.
Yep.
I very much enjoyed the fight scenes in this film. I would say that like the thing that really drew me in my opinion, was like, and you guys asked, where did this come from? Like this character of Hitler. I think it came from somebody watching like 1970s Batman and then The Producers by Mel Brooks, like in one evening. And they're like, oh, like this is a thing. You create like this awkward Hitler comic book villain and then have some fighting on the side. It's brilliant. I think it's amazing. That's the only reason I can imagine this actually came up. Maybe some mushrooms.
Yes.
I'm gonna blow your mind a little bit.
All right.
Let's try and put this whole movie into some context. Imagine in your head that this movie is a semi-sequel to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the first one. Bear with me.
All right.
All those kids in the Foot Clan, all the ones that were just, drinking and smoking and all that downstairs, they're the washouts of the Foot Clan. These kids, they're all washouts. They moved to a different state. They don't, instead of the Shredder, you got Hitler.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh. And this could literally be canon.
It exists in the same universe.
This could literally be canon. The whole thing goes down. Pinoy gets, he marries the 15-year-old who's always hitting on him, and they move somewhere quiet where people won't mind the age gap. Ernie Reyes Jr. character leaves after his dad pushes him too far one too many times and goes, and the only work he can get to get his one-room apartment in New York is a pizza delivery guy, at which point he meets Leonardo, Raphael, Donatello, and Mikey. And I think that's it. I love it. Mm-hmm. I absolutely am a huge fan.
We just solved the mystery. Because how many times did you were you thinking when you were watching this movie, is this sure feels like Ninja Turtles 1 or 2?
Constantly. It really does.
But considering the writing and the production and who was involved, it had a lot of that feel.
Well, and that's the thing. And the dialogue is, of course, and the story arc is not anywhere near as competent as Ninja Turtles, but it's it feels like that because there's this weird sense of fun. Like you never really feel like anyone's in imminent danger. Even the most gruesome thing is when the wise father figure of the film stabs a teenager in the neck with a cocktail toothpick, and that's the most bizarre scene. But after that, the only time is you think there's that the fight with Chemo, who really is friggin' huge, who I think he's fighting Ernie Reyes Sr., and you think he may have killed him. At least I was wondering if he killed him, trying to remember, because he gets beaten quite severely. They don't actually show him, and then at the end, I guess he's fine. I don't know. I don't know how this. I don't know.
He was walking with a cane, but
that's true.
alive.
That's true. So yeah, so can we talk about the ending of this movie? So the ending of
No, let's not do that. It's a perfect film. Let's just skip the ending.
So
didn't need one.
The end, and it doesn't have one. So it kind of does, right? Like the thing that like Undefeated was a treat for me because it's one of these movies that really did have a definitive end, right? Like and a satisfying one. There's a gruesome, unnecessarily vicious end to this serial killer who's essentially just a very sick, mentally ill person who happens to be violent, right? Like that's really how they end. Like this man has severe mental problems and he's caused several deaths. Let's hang him by his eye socket until dead. Like that's a gruesome end. Whereas when we get to the ultimate fight, the ending is sort of just that punch and you're down. I don't even know what happens. Like the last one to go is Chemo, and he is knocked out of a hayloft right onto the ground, and then Ernie Reyes Jr. jumps after him to, I assume, land on him, but we don't see it. The next scene we see is Pinoy looking down on them from the hayloft, and you've got Ernie Reyes Jr. just standing over him, spread-legged, like looking down at him. I don't know what happened. Did Chemo have a heart attack? Did all of the steroids finally crush his, aorta? I don't know how that. I don't know what happened. Okay, but we assume he's down for the count or dead or whatever. What they did with the bodies, I have no concept. But that's not really the end, because then we have the scene where Hitler has escaped. And because he was never in this room with the same people anyway, he's escaped back to his warehouse where this large black man, who is a character in theory, but really we just see him a couple of times by himself with two bodyguards talking on the phone to Hitler, like, you got my stuff? And Hitler's like, I'll get your stuff. Like, that's the only time we see him, but he's there. And then you expect him to like kill or threaten Hitler and like have a fade out. And you do get a fade out, but it's of the man turning to face Hitler and forcing Corin Nemec's character to his knees. And I'm like, are we supposed to assume that he's forcing him to give a blowjob? Like, that's actually what it looks like.
I was assuming it's death by deep throat, but
because that's what it looks like. That's what it looks like. And I don't know if it's intentional. It's not clear enough if it's intentional or it's just he's supposed to be choking him, or if he's like, like, good thing you wore the red bra.
That's a way to asphyxiate, though. I don't know.
So that was, I don't know, Tad, what was your impression? Was that, or is he just dead, or what are we supposed to get from that?
I think it's a combination of both, because after all, remember the character you're talking about.
Yeah.
And don't forget the entire nipple torture scene that was after the whole thing with the jacking off in the corner.
Right. Let's hold off on that for a second, because that scene where he is forced to apparently give fellatio to his employer, that's not the end either, because then we get another scene where they're back at the foster home, and which, by the way, no one's ever going to take these children. Number one, they're almost 18. Number two, I still don't know what they're doing. Why did she, as a hooker, use the window to come home instead of the door? I don't understand that either. Like, they all live there. But we get a scene of them at the house, Ernie Reyes Jr. looking for Pinoy, and they're like, he's gone, man, he left. And he's like, what? And then we get a scene of them driving around town at night, everyone, the old lady, Ernie Reyes Sr., who's now walking with a cane, and Pinoy is like standing on a loading dock with like some homeless person's blanket that he stole that looks like a Christmas blanket, and they're like, where'd you go, man? And they basically give him shit for leaving. And he's like, well, I cause problems everywhere I go, which has not really been an issue through this whole thing, except for the fact that he doesn't speak English and doesn't know why everyone attacks him every second of the day. Okay, so that could be a problem. but it's like, and then Ernie Reyes Jr., I kind of expect his character to be like, dude, you can't leave us like that. You got to come back, man. We need you. But no, he says, I could kick your ass. I'm the new Pinoy. I don't give a shit. And he's like,
that's a genuine response, though.
And that, yeah. And then Ernie Reyes Sr. is like, you have to come help these kids. And I'm like, yeah, because clearly you're not doing it. Like, you're like, these kids need help. So I'm going to protect their drug stealing ass and allow them to hook at 15. I don't understand. This is not a safe place for children. Like, this foster home should be shut down. Like, this is a terrible. I don't know who's taking care of the
These
animals.
are not the good guys.
Like it's insane. Okay. And then like I guess they convinced Pinoy to come back. That's it. And I'm like, that's the ending. And I'm like, what? Okay.
I'm going to be honest. I'm going to watch this movie again many times, and I'm just going to stop it before that scene.
Yeah. It's like
it's just gonna. It's just
like,
not necessary.
It's like if you gave the end of the Lord of the Rings trilogy some sort of diuretic, and it just went forever, more and more and more. Like it never
wasn't
stopped.
Emotional somehow. Somehow, like you went through this whole journey with them, but then there was no emotion of it at all.
No growth, nothing. Ernie Reyes Jr. is not a different person. He's not a different person. He's still a little shit. And I should use her name because she actually was probably one of the strongest actors in there. Is it Karen or Katie? Or Susan. I think it's Susan.
It's Susan.
Susan.
I looked her up. She doesn't seem to have a lot of credits.
No, she did a couple of TV shows. She did Jeremiah and Andromeda, but not too much. And she played stripper number 4 in John Doe in 2002, which is unfortunate because she was pretty good. You know, very.
She was good up until that last scene. She wasn't very good. That whole last scene was a mess.
The whole last scene was a true mess. It was I don't know. I think this is what it felt like. It felt like Pinoy's backstory is actually Shashir Inokala's real life. Like they literally were like, he just showed up from the Philippines and walked into a sandwich shop where Ernie Reyes Jr. and Sr. were having lunch and was like, can I have a job? And they were like, we've got a job for you. Come with us. And he didn't know what was happening. He didn't understand. And they just threw him in front of people that were swinging at him for, I'm estimating a 14-day shoot. And we just went with it. Like, that's what it feels like. And then he actually ran off, and then they drove and found him and were like, get in the car. And he's like, I don't want anything. I take the blanket back, and like, get in the car. So I think that's the true ending to this film.
Very possibly. I mean, I take a more realistic approach to it is this, group of writers and directors and actors, mostly the same person, just has no talent for kind of like the emotional and philosophical kind of conclusions and climaxes.
Right. Yeah.
And it just, clearly the talents lie somewhere else because they made a very entertaining film that's just madness. But like, when you try to get like that touchy-feely, like friends and family are important, and like, there's some sort of philosophical process involved, all that stuff just falls completely dead. Just didn't have the right ideas and execution on how to like bring those to conclusion.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think that they're like, we need some sort of ending, and then it was like, here it is, and they're like, well, this isn't really an ending, but I'm pretty sure an hour and 47 minutes in, most people will stop watching, so we're gonna go with it, and that's what happened. And so that was a little upsetting to me. But
I mean, like if you took like the Pinoy story out of it, it's literally hooligans, foster children, steal cocaine. Battle between gangs ensues. That's the entire plot.
Yep.
There's nothing else to it.
What do you need? What else do you need?
Exactly, and it works somehow. Like, you know what I mean? It's just like, it's just madness and silly and strange things happening. Like, the producers in 1970s played by Batman.
Springtime for Hitler.
Springtime for Hitler. Yeah, I think. And this is one of those films, both of them actually are films where a lot of the cast really has no, like their trail sort of goes cold in the mid 2000s, and it's very hard to find information on them, which is, unfortunate, because I think some of them, like Melissa Barker Sauer, who played Susan, is probably pretty good. She's a good actress. I don't know if sometimes these film projects sour people on it, or if they just never get enough money, or oftentimes I do know that they hire locals where they're filming. So oftentimes those people are not going to relocate to LA, and that could be it as well. But it is interesting to find people and be like, huh, so Hitler's working, but Teenage Hooker's not working. Ernie Reyes Jr. Can we just mention too, the Robin Webb? He is the heavy set UK karate instructor who gets his ass handed to him, and they pretend like he's being smug, but Ernie Reyes Jr. really just sets him up and belittles him because he is pretty good at kung fu, or excuse me, kung fu, that's inappropriate, karate. Yeah. And then he gets his ass handed to him by Pinoy, who again does not know why he's beating someone up. And and Robin Webb, it's nice to see him because he's actually a stunt coordinator, and he's stunt coordinator on this film, but he's done a lot of stunt stuff. He was in Bird on a Wire with Mel and Goldie Hawn. So he's done a lot of stuff. Walking Tall, the remake, he did that as well. He was a stunt person in that, but I have a feeling he's done a lot of stunt work, so he takes those leads, and it's nice to see those people, as you said, Jeff, in front of the camera for once, because he was fine. He actually did a good job. I had trouble placing his accent at first. I couldn't tell if it was a speech impediment because he's talking about karate, but with this heavy UK accent. I was like, oh, he's Australian, so yeah, don't know about that.
Thought he was just talking like he had sleep apnea while awake.
Yeah, he kind of does that too. There's another. Let's talk about the nipple scene. Tad, set us up for this because I'd forgotten until you mentioned this scene.
We're going back in time, so I don't know what exactly the point. I mean, there doesn't have to be a point to anything that Hitler does in this movie. It's just largely entertaining anytime you see him on screen, even though the acting is not fantastic. And by the way, as someone who grew up watching Parker Lewis Can't Lose, the realization, I was like, oh, Jesus Christ, Parker Lewis is Hitler?
Yes, yes.
Fuck?
Yeah.
Extra special surprise. So I got the feeling that I felt like they were trying to establish his bisexuality by, first, he's got this Playboy centerfold-ish looking person as his secretary. But then, well, he's got an underling who's topless and strapped to a table, I guess, and he's literally caressing the man and nipple torturing him by just grabbing him and just squeezing as hard as he can. And I don't even remember what the hell he was talking about because nothing that the Hitler character says, unless it's actually something lifted out of an actual Hitler speech, which totally did happen, which led to one of my favorite quotes in the entire movie, which was, I remember reading that speech in school. And then the other guy goes, fuck school. And that's it. Then it just cuts to the next scene.
It's true.
Amazing. Just fucking amazing. So
yeah, that line, like, kind of really plays to the contrast of both the diversity of the people that are in his squad, but also that they're like children. Yeah. They're just kids, you know?
And they really are. Like most people in this movie actually appear underage, which is concerning on a certain level.
So I don't know what else to set up because without actually looking at the non-existent script, because I'm pretty sure that anything with Corin Nemec on screen was scripted at all, except for, because I mean, remember there's a scene in there where she hands him the phone and the phone just flies out
of his hands. Yeah, totally
just flies off camera. And I instantly looked at it, I'm like, that totally was supposed to be a blooper reel. And they said, you know what? It's fucking hilarious. Keep it. Just leave it that way because it fits with the character so well.
It does. And he stays in character. I mean, Nemec's credit, he does a great job. He never leaves this character. I don't know.
He does.
I mean, I don't know why you'd want to stay with this character for a great deal of time, but he stays with him. I guess we are as the audience, right? But he does. But yeah, there's this nipple, like, and the young guy who he's fondling in a torturous manner, they've like greased him up. So it's just a really hilariously bizarre scene, and it's comical and it's weird and it's also a little long, but it's just, you know,
there's a lot of things that run a little long in this movie, Nate.
And again, he's monologuing.
Yeah,
Dude
the whole
doesn't
time.
say a word.
The whole time.
Talking about the merchandise, which apparently all his followers are merchandise too, which again fits with the character very well.
It's true.
It's just
It's
like
true.
at the whole time I'm like, he's fondling this guy, and he's a martial artist, and he's not very fit. Not fit compared to the rest of the characters.
He's 50s
but he's
fit,
a kid.
you know. Yeah.
Comparatively.
It's and I would love to give the name of the actress who played Hitler's secretary, but I have no idea, because the names in this film, this is why it pays to watch the credits for movies, and a lot of people don't, but especially these sort of cult films or unknown films, because first off, there are over 20 people credited as Goon in this film. Like, all these people play Goon. The one difference among these is an actor named John Sampson, who plays Goon in a suit. I don't know why that's differentiated. There are definitely several goons in suits. I don't know. I would think perhaps it's because he's actually, John Sampson actually has done a gajillion films as a stuntman. So he was probably a little known in the area. He's also done like over, several dozen acting roles. So he's been a lot, but I don't know why. I guess maybe that's what put him in charge as a, oh, you're going to be the goon in a suit. Trust me, goon in a suit. Because
they didn't even number goons.
No, they did not. There's too many.
Yeah.
There's
no
too
goon
many.
number 5.
No, there's only 6 crazy dragons, the enemy team. But anyway, so point being, I have no idea who that actress is.
I do.
Do you? Is it Daniela
I did the research.
Evangelista?
I am 98% sure that is Julia K. Smith, who I looked it up. That comment that I had before about Playboy Centerfold, I wasn't making that up. I believe, if I read her credits right, she actually was in Playboy at one point, and she has a large credit roll of very bad skin flick B movies, and I believe she actually worked with Russ Meyer at some point.
You were right. She did. She also, I know her. I can't believe I didn't realize it. Yes, it's also, she worked with Julie Strain a lot. She did a lot of Andy Sedaris films like Day of the Warrior. So it's interesting to see her in that, because and by the way, I apologize to our listeners. I forgot a 4th ending to this movie. There is the ending preceding the final tracking Pinoy down to the alleyway, where this character, who you're right is titled Secretary, is dressed in bright clothes, sitting in a tree next to the road with her teddy bear, and hails a taxi, right?
Yep.
She hails a taxi, gets into the taxi, and I don't even remember what she says, but she's going to Disneyland, and she drives off. I don't really. I'm going to be honest. I would like to see her movie, because I don't know what her motivation is, where she came from. No
Why
clue.
she was crossing and uncrossing her legs incessantly in the first scene she's in.
I don't.
It was something sexual.
Sure, and I mean,
that. I mean, might have to go through it again.
And to be fair to her, I mean, they were like, look, we have to have something going in while this guy is babbling nonsensically for 3 to 4 minutes at a time. Like, so just do something. And she does. She's a focal point. She provides all of the, oh shit, cat in a window shots. We needed to edit here. Let's just show her face, looking insane or goofy. She did a good job. So kudos to that. But yeah, that's yet another ending in there that I missed. I can't believe I missed that, except for the fact that there are so many.
They wrapped up every loose end. Every loose end was wrapped up, whether you wanted it or not.
It's true. It's true. It's important to say too, to give full credit, that Ernie Reyes Jr. is only the co-author on this film. Manu Tupou, who died in 2004, and I may be misstating his name as well. He's an actor from Fiji. He has been acting had been acting for many years, since the 60s. And he's been in so many things. The original A-Team, Hill Street Blues. He played a Native American a lot. And he was Ubu in one episode of Batman the Animated Series, which made me happy, because I was like, oh, I know that. So he's been in a lot of stuff. He's also apparently his only writing credit was this movie. I don't know again, I wish I could see the script for this film, because I have a sneaking suspicion that it's one page and a blank sheet of paper.
And Ernie Reyes says motherfucker. Just when if you don't know what your lines are, just be like motherfucker.
Yeah, it's instead of a drag queen mouthing along to a song saying watermelon, it's just Ernie Reyes Jr. looking into the camera going motherfucker, motherfucker. Yeah.
Did you? I noticed, and when you played the clip, I didn't hear it the first time I was watching the movie. But but remember when he's like taunting the kids to get them to chase him? I'm pretty sure he's like, "Yeah, stick my dick in your ass." He said it really low, so you could barely hear it. But I heard it at that time. I'm like, I missed that.
Yeah. It is there. Yeah, no, they definitely did like several rounds of looping over that, because they're just people saying things. There's a lot of ADR in this film, dialogue recorded afterward that. I don't really. It's not very good in that it's too clean. But I would rather that than just really poor audio like Shark Exorcist, which I could understand, but was just so uneven. I will give them credit for at least doing ADR so I could understand what they're saying, but it often sounds like they're in a recording booth rather than on set. The other thing is I want to give credit to the Foley work in this movie. Those sound effects are perfect. They're absolutely critical, especially in Chemo's fight scene in the barn near the end of the film. Like every flying fist gets a whoosh. Every foot pound gets the perfect sound. Like it's on point. Like they did not mess around with that. And I don't know exactly who to credit with that. It could be several people, but no, it really couldn't. I guess Daryl Bennett was both the music supervisor and sound designer. He did a great job with that. So, and that's really important when you watch that film. If you if you throw a fight scene like that on mute and you don't hear any exaggerated sound or fist hitting a side of beef or something, it's missing. You're gonna be unhappy with it. So, good on them. The other thing we didn't really talk about yet, we kind of mentioned it, is the strange Christian references in this film. Yeah. So Ernie Reyes Jr., I assume I'm a big fan. I assume he's fairly religious because he starred in a sort of Christian themed film called The Secret of the Horse. It's a short film, but it kind of got a little bit of note. So I don't know if that's one of his things, but in this film, there's a lot of pictures of Jesus, and they try, I think kind of unsuccessfully, to make Pinoy a Jesus character, because he's told, by his father figure in the Philippines to go show others the light. And then there's this weird scene where he first shows up at the breakfast table at the foster home, and Ernie Reyes Sr., who runs the place, sees him and just instantly attacks him. And then once he successfully defends himself, he's just nods yep, everything's great. But in the meantime, in the film, a knife has been driven into a portrait of Christ on the wall.
And he's laughing.
And he's laughing. And of course, Ernie Reyes Jr. is laughing his head off. And Pinoy is just staring at this knife stuck in next to Jesus' head, just kind of, I guess, horrified. I don't really know. I mean, it's the most honest response. Yeah, I don't. But what cracks me up is that if you go on the reviews for this film, you will see several of people who watch The Secret of the Horse being very upset by this movie, which cracks me up, because I don't know what about a film called The Ultimate Fight really drives you to think that there's a strong religious message of any kind. I think you're looking in the wrong book.
Are you sure this isn't just a bunch of trolling, Nate? Because I read a couple of those reviews and I felt like it was Troll Central.
Oh, there are a lot of trolls, but I mean, we're talking that there is a film that Ernie Reyes Jr. was in, and it is fairly religious in tone. So I don't know if I don't know. We can also talk about real quick Ernie Reyes Jr. I'm just trying to find places that people will know him from, because he is very recognizable. And I think a lot of people don't know his name, but would recognize him as an actor. He plays Prince Tarn in Red Sonja from 1985 with Schwarzenegger and Bridget Nielsen, which you may not know, but you should. The most troublesome one is he plays a character called Manitou in the Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson film The Rundown, and that's a weird one because he does great. He of course does action scenes, great stunts. He's totally jacked, but he basically is an Asian man in blackface in that film. It's the weirdest. Like that wouldn't fly today. I mean, it's only, it's about 17 years ago, but that just would not happen to see him painted up as a Aboriginal Amazon jungle dweller. It was a weird one. But I do remember seeing it in theaters and being so excited because I was like, it's Ernie Reyes Jr. because I hadn't seen him in so long. And despite the problematic casting, he is an actor of color and he's a great one. So there.
That's it.
Go watch Surf Ninjas.
So I wanted to just as a serious note, as serious as I possibly can be, I am a martial artist. I'm not claiming to be a great one or even a good one, but I am one. And it was very interesting going back to this movie after 15 plus years from the perspective of a martial artist, because I'm always interested now looking back at these movies, especially when there are professional martial artists in these films and performing choreography. I like to see, and now I can recognize what's real and what is clearly for show. And for any listeners who are interested in martial arts, I originally went to this movie going, I wonder if there's going to be any references, or maybe this is the most short-handed reference to Remy Presas ever. And if you do not know Remy Presas, fantastic martial artist, look him up. He actually directly taught my sensei that I currently have for maybe a couple of years, off and on. Basically the Bruce Lee of Filipino martial arts. No joke. And that's what I thought, because the movie started off with a scream of sticks, clearly our niece, clearly big Philippines flag in the background. I was like, it's Coming to America story, because Remy Presas actually left the country under very, very bizarre circumstances, because it was back in the time when Filipino politics was, I guess you could say it was sort of influenced by everything that was going on in post-Vietnam. Government was very much trying to make our niece a national sport and nationalize it, similar to the way that China's doing with Tai Chi now. The problem with that is that inevitably what government does is they nominate someone who's obviously not in a martial art. Prime didn't like that, and someone tried to kill him, so he left. And I wanted to see some of this in this movie. I don't know if Ernie Reyes Jr. tried to sort of at least allude to that, but it was a miserable failure if he did.
Well,
but there was our niece.
Yes, and I will say it is nice that they do give a little bit of a Filipino identity in this film, and they actually mention our niece by name, which I can't think of a film of that era or this one that even mentions it, despite the fact that it's pretty influential. So that was a nice feature, even if the social impact is not at all attempted in this film, and I don't think I need to say that. So if I think I'll start off this one. The Ultimate Fight, I'd recommend it to people who love Ernie Reyes Jr., love the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle films from the 90s, and anyone who's interested in seeing a multi-ethnic cast, including Hitler, who curses and wears ladies' undergarments for pleasure.
He does a lot of cocaine.
He does do a lot of cocaine. Actually, he does a little bit of cocaine a lot. Like, his ring is always empty and he's always upset about it.
Yes, fill this ring.
Yeah, I don't know. I thought he was planning to sell the merchandise. All right. Jeff, who would you recommend this film to?
Oh, man. You know what? I love this film. And so I'm going to recommend it to anyone. And I'll tell you why. Because if you can get through and you have like a sense of humor and you can avoid being like extremely, offended by anything, and you get to the end, it's going to be a blast. It's going to be an enjoyable ride. If you didn't and you hated it, sorry. But it's worth the risk. It's worth the risk. That's my assessment.
Tad?
You bitch ass motherfucker, you stole my thunder.
Sucker.
But I have the same sentiment. I think honestly, watch if you know, if you're one to enjoy this type of humor, watch it multiple times, and especially now that I put it in your head, watch it after you watch the first Ninja Turtles, and try and pretend that everybody in this cast is a Foot Clan loser knockoff who just basically couldn't cut it in the real clan.
Well, that is an excellent note to end on, and I don't need any more encouragement to watch Ninja Turtles again ever. That's
right
all. Sounds good to me. This has been Colton Classic. Thank you guys so much. Again, every clip in this show is used for review purposes and is the property of the owners and distributors of those films. Play us out is The Chud. And let's all give them a big hand. Thank you so much to The Chud for letting us use their music. You can find them at www.facebook.com/thechudband. And as always, if you enjoyed this podcast, please rate us on the podcast provider of your choice and donate at www.cultandclassicpodcast.com. This is Nate Wyckoff signing off.